hurt that foot on that canoe trip, did you?
That's next year's story.
Well, that's all right. Well, you know, in this liars contest, if you pay your fee, you can tell as many stories as you want. Somebody said if they turned in at least 3 stories, they might win first, second, and third place. And our next storyteller thinks he might win first and second, I think. So let's welcome Gary Kuntz again to the floor.
About that much fun. It was my job at my grandparents' farm to gather eggs. Every time we would go to my grandparents' farm, for some reason they thought me, knowing nothing about farms, had to have a job, and it was always gather eggs. My dad was in the military, and we spent a lot of time overseas. And we'd be gone for 3 years and then come back, and he would save his leave up, so we would spend 30, sometimes 45 days at my grandparents' farm. When I was 8 years old, we showed up there, and they handed me the wire basket, and I got to go gather eggs. And gathering eggs, not too bad of a job. They had this really huge chicken yard. They had one hen house, but the hens could lay eggs wherever they want. And I had to go check around all the corners because sometimes those eggs would get to maturity. And about my 3rd day there, I'm walking into the hen house, grab a bunch of eggs, walk back out, walking around the yard, and I see a group of hens, and they're pecking at something. There's like 4 or 5 of them, and they're just pecking. I'm thinking, what's going on? It's either got to be a really good worm, or maybe a snake, or something that's really tasty. And I get closer, and it wasn't. It was a little baby chick. What I call a peeper. And these hens were trying to peck it. But this little guy, he was tough. He wasn't having any of this stuff. Hen would come down to peck, and he'd swing his wing, pow! And surprise the thing. Another one would come up, and he'd go down with his beak and get them on their chicken toes. Apparently chicken toes are tender. I didn't know that. And they would jump back, but he was pretty well outnumbered 5 to 1, and they were like 4 or 5 pounds, and he was 1.5 ounces, maybe. And after watching this for a little while, I thought, you know, I better do something because those hens are going to get hurt. So I went over and I grabbed the chick, picked it up, and it just kind of glared at me. I said, it's okay. Come with me. I grabbed my wire basket of eggs. We headed out of the chicken yard, those hens following, closed the door. My grandma had come out of the house, and she was just watching this. I said, Grandma, what's going on? And then she explained to me what happens when hens don't like something, they henpeck it to death. She said that poor little thing is just not going to survive. Might as well just toss it back in the chicken yard. I'm 8 years old. I'm not going to do this. It's like, no, we got to save it. And my grandma was a farm lady. She didn't have a whole lot of sentiment here, but she just kind of sighed and said, okay, let me see if I can find a shoebox or something. She got a shoebox. We got some straw, put a little bit of water in a container in there, tucked it back on the porch out of the wind. And she said, we'll see how it does. Next day, that little thing was alive. Next day after that, it started hopping out of the shoebox and started following me around the chicken yard. I thought, this is not too bad. Now, I wouldn't let it come into the chicken yard because, you know, those hens were there. Day after that, though, it slipped in. It was walking alongside me. One of those hens came up and pow! It's like, dang. And that's when I decided he needed a name. Now, this was 1959, and I was trying to think of the bravest and strongest man that I knew. And that was Tarzan. But calling a chicken Tarzan just didn't seem right, and I knew that was a trademark name and you can't use it. So I decided to call him JW.
Oh.
After the guy who played Tarzan, Johnny Weissmuller. Johnny Weissmuller is just too much, but JW seemed like a good name for the chicken. So I said, JW, come on. And he would follow with me. And things went along pretty good. We would go do things. I'd go out fishing. He'd come over there. He was really good at finding worms. Came back. And then one day, I realized something about that chicken yard. There were a whole lot of hens there, but there was only one rooster. And I made the mistake of asking my grandma about that. And she said, well, you know, chickens lay eggs. The hens do. But the roosters, well, you only need one rooster. And what do you think Sunday dinner's been? And then I noticed that she was eyeing JW. And I figured as long as I kept him with me, it's good. But I knew I had to leave. And I thought, okay, what can I do? And that's when I decided to train him. They'd had a farm dog, but the farm dog had gone off someplace and disappeared and never came back. And so they were in between, so I decided to train JW like a farm dog. And I started with sit. If you know anything about chickens, they're low to the ground, sit works well. Then come, you know, a little bit of chicken feed. He came right away, he was really good. Stay. He took a little bit of time, it took about 30 minutes before he got that concept. No, stay there. No, put him back there, stay there. Roll over. Chickens like to roll over in the dirt, this is all right. Heel. Yeah, little chicken beak right next to my left knee as I walked along. He was really good at this. There was a problem with fetch. Because I picked up a stick and I wasn't really thinking, and I threw the stick and he went after it. And he caught it in midair. But the stick was about as big as he was, and it landed. And then he drug it back to me and he put it right in front of my feet, and it's like, let's do it again, come on. And I knew that wasn't enough. I had to do something. And then I realized they needed a guard dog. They're out on the farm. They don't have a dog. Why not a guard chicken? And my dad was in the Army. I knew how to do this. So I trained him to march, walk a post, to do an about face with his heel, you know, the whole bit. Hold his wing up, stop. And I did as well as I could, and then all of a sudden it was time for us to leave. And I saw Grandma looking at him, and I thought, he's not gonna make it. I gave him a big hug before we left. My dad was stationed at Fort Devens, Massachusetts. The farm's in Iowa. We weren't gonna see them for a while. Came back for Christmas. Everybody seemed to be excited except for me. I'm in the back seat going, I didn't want to know what happened to JW. And we drove and drove and drove and drove. And finally we get there. We started heading down that long driveway. And all of a sudden I felt the car just, and my dad said, what's that stupid chicken doing in the middle of the driveway? Stupid chicken. It's got its wing up. Wait, I looked out and jumped out of the car. It was JW. He was alive, he'd made it. I ran up, I gave him a big hug. Walked him back up to the house. He still knew heel. Even after 6 months, he remembered heel. Talked to my grandma and said, what happened? And she said, well, he was going to be Sunday dinner. But Friday night after you left, about midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, we heard all this really loud racket. And at first we thought a fox had gotten in with the chickens or something. And then we realized, nah, there was somebody down by the barn with the car. They were trying to rob us. And in the midst of it was your chicken. He was fighting them off. Where he learned karate, I do not know. But he was doing a good job. And Grandpa, of course, pulled the shotgun out, fired something in the air. They left and never came back. And Grandma said, well, after that, we just couldn't have them for Sunday dinner. I said, well, Grandma, I'm sorry you missed Sunday dinner. She said, well, we didn't. You only need one rooster. So Christmas was good. And then it was time to leave. And we walked out, got in the car, waved goodbye, and he waved goodbye. Started down the drive, and I said, Dad, stop for a second. Because he just looked so sad. And I got out of the car, and I did the only thing I could think to do. I straightened up. And when I did, his wing came up. Well, after we got back to Devon's, my dad got orders to go to the Philippines for 3 or 4 years. My grandma wrote us about J-Dub. Apparently he learned and kept on heel with her also. And I just always remember him.